Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to check out the brand new Vanguard Knives Continuum. This is a Tuff Knives collaboration. As you can see there, Jeff Bluevelt. I love pretty much everything that he designs, and I could not wait to start testing this one. I love the size of it. It's coming in at 7.87 inches overall. It has a 3.42 inch drop point blade of Bowler M390 stainless steel. DLT has this listed as a stone washed black DLC finish. I don't know if that's a DLC or not. It could be. You have fullers on both sides of the blade that you can use for deployment. We'll talk about that later. You have a little thumb ramp right here. No jumps up top, but it's nice and comfortable up here. You have a very stout, robust tip there. So if you need to do some piercing or some twisting and turning, you should be okay with that. The sharpening choil, I'm going to call it good. The plunge grind comes way back here, so you should have several sharpenings before it'll widen up at the heel. Love to see that. And let's see, can you fix it? Yeah, it's got an internal stop pin, so if you ever needed to widen that up just a little, you could, and that should be fairly easy to do with either a diamond file or a Dremel. This blade has a kind of unusual grind here, so this straight edge portion, you can see how thin the bevel is, and then it gradually starts to thicken all the way up to that tip, getting pretty darn thick. This is a flat grind. It does go up fairly high, and I know in the straight edge portion it comes down to around 21 thousandths behind the edge. So as long as this edge bevel geometry is decent and it came sharp, it should slice very well. Let's find out. I gotta say, this is the sharpest Vanguard knife I've ever gotten out of box, and this is only my third one. The other ones weren't bad at all. I got lucky, all mine have been sharp, but this one is the sharpest of the day. This is the fourth knife I've tested today, and this one is hands down, leaps and bounds better than the rest. It's not the thinnest, it doesn't have the thinnest geometry, but still I think like 20 thousandths in the straight edge portion, and it is slicing so well. I mean, as long as you keep it nice and sharp, it's going to slice well until you get to stuff, that's really dense to where it might collapse on the side walls of the primary bevel. But this type of stuff, excellent. It does have a good bit more belly than I usually tend to gravitate toward. However, as long as you make these shorter cuts like I'm making right here, you shouldn't have any issues sliding out of the cut. I only really notice that whenever I'm trying to do long cuts. And I mean, I can slide out any cut no matter what blade shape it is. But now we're gonna test the ergos, and you got nice deep chamfers on the side of these scales that give it a contoured feeling. I'm really locked in, and the edge of the clip is good. Now when I get to the very end, I'm really pushing down because I'm trying to see if I feel anything. And at the very end, the tip of the back of the pocket clip was starting to be a little uncomfortable. Not terrible, but just something I want to note. This belly is really going to shine at doing these cuts on a flat cutting surface, and just look how easy. I tried to leave a few before I started speeding it up. I mean, like butter. And if you look, I'm in that transition spot, like right whenever it starts to go into that belly, it starts to thicken up rapidly. And you can tell by the edge bevel, and I've also checked it, and it gets rather thick up to that tip. But once again, it's extremely sharp up there at the front, and it's making all this a piece of cake. The 1/2 inch of rope can be a bear, especially if the knife isn't, sharp with bite. And this has both in spades. It's absolutely phenomenal. I even cut a longer piece of rope on this one just because I had a good feeling before, because of the rest of the test, that this one was going to perform great. And boy, was I right. So I think we ended up cutting, like 160 cuts before I ran out of the piece I cut for this. Not checking for head retention or anything. Just I do this so I can see how it feels while cutting, how well it cuts, and just to make sure there's no craziness that happens with the edge that shouldn't. I have a ballpark of where M390 should be and what it shouldn't do after testing so many knives. And I know this isn't probably M390 at 62 or 63 Rockwell, but if you said it's 60 HRC, I would definitely believe that. And I can't complain with how well this one is doing so far. Now I'm showing you can use the tip if you want, but you do have to come up a decent bit. So, using the belly is just going to be the natural way to do it. But I'm cutting 3 of all these. I usually cut 2 because it's going so well. Now, this is the first thing. This dense cardboard was the first time I noticed the drag from that thicker portion of the edge. Everything else, no problem whatsoever. You probably won't ever notice it as long as you have it nice and sharp. This one was a blast to sharpen. This is a blast to test and probably the funnest one yet. Hands down, definitely the best performance out of the Vanguard knives that I've had on the channel. I think I've had 2 Vanguard knives so far. I've been enjoying all of them, but this one has to be my favorite by far. So let's check out the deployment and action of this one. So you do have a blade hole and you have fullers on both sides that have that perfect lip there. It's not too smooth, and I can easily reverse flick this one if I want. I usually use, I just use the fuller to thumb flick it. You're definitely going to have to keep your fingers off that lock bar because it will lock you out if you do put your fingers on there. If you want to slow roll it, you can. And of course, if you grab those fullers, you could do the spotty drop. They have a very well-tuned detent, and it's riding on cage ceramic ball bearings with the ceramic detent ball, giving it a nice smooth action. Mine's breaking in more and more every day. After this review, I'll probably take this one apart, clean it up. Sometimes when you have these finishes on the blades, sometimes the residue from this finish will get in that pivot area. So I'm going to clean it up, put my own lube in there, and I'm sure it's going to make the action even better than it is. But like I said, the detent is dialed, and as soon as you break it, this thing comes flying out. Absolutely love it. Now let's take a look at the handle area. So you have different versions of this one. You have some with the inlay right here. You have some that just have the titanium and some of the milling. So you have a gray titanium frame. It looks like a bead blasted finish. You have deep chamfer here, and then you have a chamfer going all the way around right here. It definitely gives it a contoured feeling in hand. During all the testing, it was rather comfortable. It fills out the hand nicely. This portion of the pocket clip was fine. Only thing I noticed, and I talked about it at the end of the testing, when I really started pushing as hard as I could, at the very, very end of pushing as hard as I could feel this top peak right here on that pocket clip, even though it's kind of knocked off, and this side. This side's a little bit pokier right here. It wasn't terrible, and like I said, I did not notice it till the very end. You also have these 3 little lines milled in, a line right here, and aesthetically, I think it all just goes very well together. Now, I'm guessing that's like a marbled carbon fiber inlay right here. I do wish they would have put it on this side as well, and it would have been great to have that lock relief on the inside. That would have made this a lot cleaner, especially being that we have a blind screwed milled titanium pocket clip. So that just means that there's no holes on the outside. They're done from the inside, keeping it really, really clean looking. Your hardware, you have a Torx T8 for your pivot, T8 for your body screws. Fantastic. You have a geared titanium backspacer that is raised just a hair. I didn't really notice that whenever I was doing the cutting. There is no internal milling, just the milling for this titanium here. So, of course, it is going to bring the weight up a little bit on this one. With the carbon fiber inlay, this one comes in at 4.55 ounces. Now, I don't mind that at all. It gives it a little bit of heft in hand. I find that to be a little bit more comfortable when I'm using it. I like my light knives too. But when you have something beefy like this, I don't mind it. You do have a hardened stainless steel lock insert. They screwed it from the inside. I think that is a nice little touch. I wish they could have just done the detent ball hole from the inside like you see, or like the ones that are on the hardened stainless steel lock inserts. And that lock insert also has an over travel protection right there. It's just a little tab so you can't overspring this lock bar. The lockup on my knife is around 30% or so. Access to the lock bar, even though it is flush with the show side scale, you have chamfers on both sides here, making it pretty easy for me to get my finger in there. I don't mind using the thumb. It's decently comfortable. I can use this portion. Very nice. And the lockup on this one is a bank vault. I cannot muscle any play in any direction. That's exactly what I want to see. I have no fear that that lock's going to come disengaged while I'm using it. Now let's do some quick size comparisons. It's in the middle of the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. And it's a good bit shorter than the Vanguard Atomic. And it's just a hair longer than the Vanguard Cheetah. And it's very similar in overall length to the Giant Mouse Ace Rio and the Quiet Carry Drift Large. And it's very similar in length to the Emerson Mini Commander and the Concept Fenrir. And lastly, it's in the middle of the Spyderco PM2 and Power 3. Now, being that no knife's perfect, let's go over my nitpicks and complaints. There's no lefty love here. Not something that affects me, but it does affect my lefties. Even though I'm not a huge jimping fan, I do think it would have been excellent to have a little patch of jimping right there just to lock you in just a little bit better. Even though this one performed outstanding, I do wish this was a little bit thinner, especially toward this tip, because it's coming in at around 45 thousandths by this tip. That is extremely, extremely thick, and every time you sharpen this, it's going to get thicker and thicker. It's about 21 thousandths up to about right here, then it gradually starts to thicken. You can actually feel the thickness. And maybe knock this corner off next time, if they got a pointy corner right there. Like I said, it wasn't terrible, and I didn't really notice it till the very end, so I'm not that concerned with it. It's been great to have this lock relief on the inside, keep it very clean, along with this detent ball hole right here. Being that you have a hardened stainless steel lock insert, you could have put the detent ball on that, then you wouldn't have any holes at all right there. It would have been great to have this inlay on this side as well. I just like symmetry. It just kind of throws my OCD tendencies off. After I review this, I'm going to go sharpen this one up. It really doesn't need. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to probably strop it until I dull it out. I've been trying not to sharpen them right away, but it still feels really nice. It actually feels way better than I even expected it to. Let's see. Got any damage to the edge yet? No damage yet. However, I checked this bevel to see what it was because, usually when it's slicing that well and you have a thicker geometry, that usually means that this edge bevel is pretty thin. And it is, but it's definitely asymmetrical. This is just my particular knife. I don't know if they're all like this or not, but my particular knife, one side has a 14 degrees bevel on it, and the other side has a 22 degrees bevel on it. Cold steel does that purposely. I never really understood that, and that can be a pain when you're like me and you sharpen on a fixed angled system. If I'm going to sharpen this one, I'm either going to put them both to 22 degrees, which I don't love that, or have to put them both at 14 degrees. If I want to match the bevels on both sides, that's what I would do. As you can see, this bevel is a little wider than this one, not by a whole bunch, but it's definitely something that I've noticed. All that said, it still performed fantastic, and that's not the end of the world for me since I can sharpen a knife, so I can fix that myself. I do love the fact though that this one came extremely, extremely sharp. It had a ton of bite to it and performed very, very well. I think this is a very classy looking knife. I like the weight on it. Never really checked. Let's see. Your balance point. So as you can see there, it is a little butt heavy, but not by much. And, I don't feel like it's going to come falling out this way or anything. The action on this one is getting better by the day. Very snappy action. Good access to the lock bar from me. And all that compiled together, looking at it and getting a feel for this knife, I don't think this is too out of line on the price. The one without the inlays is $270, and then the one with the inlays, they have different anodization colors too as well. They have all blacked out. They have a bunch of different models. Those come in at $280. It's not cheap by any means. I get it, but I really don't think it's that out of hand. If none of my nitpicks were deal breakers for you and you're interested in this knife, I will have it linked down below in the description. It will be an affiliate link, so if you want to help support what I do here on this channel, that helps me pay for my testing materials. Thanks. It doesn't cost you anything extra. If not, no sweat at all. So that's going to do it for today's video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those down below and I'll do my best to get back with you. I hope every one of y'all is having a fantastic day. And remember, keep those blades sharp, smile more.